Okay. Now, if this is working right, let's take a little look. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at this. Make sure. Okay. And do we have some? Let's take a look at this. Make sure. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's the got it. Okay, got it. Okay, perfect. And then I'm just gonna hop down here to my settings. Let's go for never Harmon. Okay. And then swap back on over here. Dope. We can see. And I'm the one viewer, aren't I? Okay. So if I come back over here, so I can see. Right. Which stats? Is this it? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Alright. Well, cool. It's too bad I don't have a separate monitor. But this will work anyway. Alright. How to write a D&D one shot. We'll give it a minute to see if anybody wants to pop in. But I'm not too worried about it. This is the sort of thing you can present to anyone. Alright. I mean, to no one. Okay. Alright. Make sure the microphone's pointed right. Okay. So, you want to write a D&D one shot. Where do you start? Not to worry, I've got a numbered list for you, alright? Step 1. We are going to pick a setting. This is more and less than just the name of the continent you're on, right? We're not talking about being in Exandria. That's a real place, I shouldn't. But, we're not talking about just the name of the city or the name of the country, right? What we're really talking about is what type of place we're going to be in. Are we going to be, zooming over a magical, golden desert with, brass automatons and merchants and genies and magic carpets? Or are we going to be in, a city where it never stops raining and it's a noir, everybody's noir detectives, right? A la Brennan Lee Mulligan's Storm City. There's 100 different things that this could be. And only 100. There's 1,000 different ways. There's 1,000 different settings to pick from. And the biggest thing about your setting is not even geographically where it takes place, it's the tone of the world, right? So for example, if you're doing like a mythic fantasy and a sword and sorcery fantasy setting, right? Those are two very geographically similar settings with two very different tones, right? Mythic fantasy is all about like going on a quest and, you know, crossing wide plains and you know, saving the world with just a little man. And sword and sorcery is all about like you know, magic is power, and power corrupts, and so all the villains are these big, wicked, mad wizards that are capturing princesses and putting them in towers, and the heroes are usually, like, down on their luck, like, adventurers, anti-heroes that are, like, you know, swigging beer and just barely holding it together with their scraped-up swords. Very, right, they both take place in very similar, like, you could set both these kinds of stories in the same continent, in the same setting, but they're very different types of tones, of stories, of atmospheres, and so you want to figure out what it is you're doing ahead of time, so you can sort of capitalize on the parts of those tropes that you enjoy, and help the story feel tonally cohesive. I gotta make sure. I don't even have a way to see chat. Alright. We got no chat. Got no chat to hold my body down. Alright, here's what we're doing right now. I'm gonna click a mute on this bad boy. And then I'm gonna throw up Twitch chat over here. No, I'll just throw up OBS. Should be able to see it. Oh, don't. You didn't see that. Don't click that. I gotta be careful. I gotta be aware. Alright. Okay. No, we're not gonna do that. Okay. I'll do this. Alright. Freaking cool. Okay, we got it. Alright. And now, what I can do is I can close that and come back over here. Alright. Listen up, y'all. Okay. So, step 1, pick a setting. We just discussed that. Step 2. Oh, right. So, I forgot. But alongside you guys, I'm going to be adding to my own example one-shot. I've just got a little thing that I'm going to be adding to, well, that I've already added to, but you're going to see sort of the steps fill in the different spots here. So my one-shot. Right now, I'm running a one-shot for some people that I don't know who any of them are going to be. I don't have the opportunity to talk to them ahead of time about what they want to make their characters, which is usually ideal. Usually I want to do that. And since I can't this time, what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be trying to set my my world in a pretty standard fantasy world that's generic, so that just about any character can come into it. But because that's probably what they're going to make pretty generic fantasy characters, is what I'm imagining. However, since I I don't want to just do generic fantasy. That's boring and it doesn't mean anything. So I'm going to sprinkle in some sword and sorcery elements. And then if I have any players that are magic users, because the big thing about, sword and sorcery is that magic is kind of corruptive. If I have any players that are magic users, I can sort of like mix that into the question of like, well, you have all this power, and how can you be the one that's trusted with it, right? So that's easily a theme I could sort of just slip in there, and that my players could enjoy. And it's a one shot, so it's not like ideally I would be able to talk to them up top, figure out what themes they want for their characters and for their respective stories. But because they are, I'm never going to see them again. We're just going to have to sort of, run on our feet and do the best we can. Anyway. Setting. So I'm going to do a sword and sorcery setting. Step 2. The Dan Harmon story wheel. This is my favorite thing. Alright? For those of you who don't know, Dan Harmon is a writer. He's a TV writer. He wrote Community, the sitcom Community, which is one of my favorite shows. He's one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. And I'm, so cool that I get all the jokes in Rick and Morty. But Dan Harmon. Okay, Dan Harmon, he's one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. He is also famous a little bit for inventing what is called the Harmon story wheel, or the Dan Harmon story wheel, which was essentially in college, he studied the crap out of Joseph Campbell and the monomyth, right, the hero's journey, that we all heard about in English class, and he read a whole bunch about that, and he condensed it down into his own version that's 8 steps, and is only and is a very popular writing tool. I can show you. This is it right here. It starts with you, the protagonist. You can't see me pointing. It starts with you. Okay, I can do this. You, the protagonist, up here. You establish who your characters are. Then you establish a need, right? There's something going wrong. Something worth doing something about. Go. They cross the threshold into the, motivated by this need, they decide to go and do something to try and fix their need, right? Search, this step is also called adapt a lot of the times. This is the stuff where, right, motivated by this need, they go out into the world. It's scary at first, it's hard, and then they start to get the hang of it. Usually this is the step where there's a lot of, fighting monsters, right? If you're going to be fighting monsters, this is the step. I am realizing I didn't even say up top. Okay, alright. Let me back up. The Dan Harmon story wheel. It's a really good writing tool. It is also so perfect for designing a one-shot session, or any D&D session. For somehow, the way that this is structured is exactly right for making a very natural, flowing, interesting story to let players play through. It's perfect. So it starts with you establish who they are. There's something wrong, something worth fixing. They go out into the world to try to fix it. And it's scary, and it's hard. And they are scared, and they're not sure what they're doing. But they figure it out. They start to get the hang of it. They're like, hey, it's scary and it's hard out here, but I kind of get it now. And I think I can handle this. Then, steps 5 and 6, they find what they were looking for, right? They solve the need that initially pushed them. But they have to pay a heavy price for it. Something goes wrong. For some reason, the thing they were looking for isn't what they were actually looking for, or it's bad somehow, or they just have to pay a much heavier price than they were expecting to solve the need. 7, they go back home, return, but they're changed because of the heavy price they had to pay. Something's different about them now. It's a very simple, very easy to understand narrative, sort of circle. And the thing about it is that the being motivated by a need is very, very natural to just like give characters not necessarily like a goal to accomplish as much as a need to solve. It helps them get into their character a lot more than you would expect. And if they have an idea of the direction they need to go to solve that need, which is what this step 3 is about, it becomes very well. I'll explain more in a minute. Here, because we're gonna dig into each of these steps. Step 2A: find/take. So now, right, we get kind of the premise of the Dan Harmon story wheel, but a lot of the times you think about starting writing at step 1, and then I heard this great tip from Amy Vorpal when she was on a show with Satine Phoenix talking about DMing, where they were talking about using the Dan Harmon story wheel. And she said that a lot of the times, and I totally agree with this, and this is something I've been doing for a good while, is that you start by writing at steps 5 and 6, find and take. There's such an interesting dynamic between those steps of trying to figure out why it is that your characters are looking for something, or what it is that your characters are looking for, right? And why there's something bad about it, why there's a heavy price to pay, why it's not actually what they're looking for. So, for example, for my one shot that I'm writing with you guys, we just know that it's going to be in a sword and sorcery setting, right? And so what's interesting things to try and look for, right? What are goals to accomplish? And I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, okay, it would be interesting if there was like a bunch of kids that had gone missing from the village, and these characters are trying to find the missing kids. But the find and take, right? The take of it is that when they find the kids have been experimented on by mad wizards, mad scientists, and the kids had developed like magical rabies, where they were a lot more powerful than they used to be because they've got like magic powers, but they're also completely rabid and ravenous and mad, and they're a boss fight. And so the characters go out trying to find these missing kids, but actually they wind up having to kill them. That's a really interesting find and take, right? So I started writing that down. We look at the steps, 5, 6, find and take. Here we go. I've got my whole little my outline right here, and starting at 5 and 6, find and take. We're trying to find the missing kids, but then they have to kill the missing kids. And usually, when you do that, it's after you figure out what the find and take are, then you can fill in what the need is, right? The need's what the initial problem was that they're trying to solve. And so if you know what the goal is at step 5, you can just fill in what the need is at step 2. Some kids have gone missing from the village.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Good, how are you?
Doing just fine. Okay. Cool. Alright, listen. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Alright. Step 2B. You and go, right? So if we look at our story wheel again, let's see here. Here we go. You and go are steps 1 and 3. You is establishing who the characters are, who your protagonists are. And go is when they're crossing the threshold into the unknown world. So when you're writing a one-shot, right, it is important to establish who your characters are, which is step 1, you. And usually, I like to do that in a 0 session, where I talk to my characters, I figure out kind of what they want their goal to be, who their characters are, how they know each other, how they think they're going to get pulled into the story in the first place. So that's usually a discussion I like to have with my characters up top. With my players up top. And then, when we start the first session, usually it's a good idea to try and establish who your characters are, why it is, like, set out the world around them, why it is that there's stakes. Why are they attached to the world, right? Usually you want to show at least the good things, or the things that have the potential to be lost if they don't solve whatever their need is. That's what the U step is about, is setting up what the stakes are, what you can lose. And then go. Once we know why it matters to our characters, right? And what it is that they're looking for, right? Kids have gone missing. Then, oh, right. And since I don't have really a whole lot of time, since I don't have the opportunity to have a 0 session up top to get to know who my characters are going to be, what I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to start, in one-shots, you're allowed to be a little bit more railroady. So I'm just going to start with them around a fire in the woods, and I'm going to tell my players that their characters are all the volunteers from a village that are out looking for the kids. And then I'll probably go around and have them introduce who their characters are and ask them why it is that they care about finding these kids, just to help ground them in the story. That's also, right, that's what this U step is about. It's easy to want to skip U. You want to skip straight into go, into need and go. But you got to establish who your characters are and help ground your players in their characters so that when things start getting nasty, they have that foundation that makes them care about the things that are happening. All right, so I'm going to start with my characters around a fire. Need, kids have gone missing, go. I think that what I'm going to probably do is I'm going to have an animal sort of run by with a children's toy in its mouth. And that can be the first clue to help our players start to figure out how to find these kids, right? Because since they have this need, this sort of fire underneath them to find these kids, they're going to be jumping on anything that they can to start trying to accomplish that goal. So just putting something in front of them like that, and it is going to be they're gonna chase after it, right? This is also, I feel like, a good place to talk about the rule of threes. No, we'll save that for later, actually. So I've got right now I'm just outlining stuff too, right? So I've got my U, my need, my go, my find, my take. Step 2C, adapt and foreshadowing, all right? So now, so the fourth spoke in my story wheel is adapt. Adapt and foreshadowing. Adapt is the middle part, right? This is the meat of the story. This is the rising action. This is where things start to get tough for our players, and where they have to start trying to overcome challenges to prepare, right? To get into, or as it leads up to the climax, to the find and take, right? And this is also a great place. So this is a place to start having our characters, right, try to solve puzzles, try to fight monsters, try to solve mysteries, exploration stuff, right? And this is also a great place to start foreshadowing what your find, take, twist is going to be, right? So for example, for mine, I have this, right? I have the twist is going to be that they find these kids, and these kids are mutated, and they have to kill them. And so, to start foreshadowing that, maybe this animal that runs by could be something that has already been experimented on, so it's also mutated, right? So, but it's mutated to a lesser extent than the kids. So, I think that maybe they try to follow this animal, and then the animal attacks them. And it's a lot more powerful than you would expect this kind of animal to be. I'm picturing a deer in my head. It's a lot more powerful than you would expect an animal of this kind to be. And so it's got some sign of its mutation that we can do a little bit to this deer and a whole lot to the kids to show how much more powerful they're going to be, right? To sort of scare the players. So for maybe it's got crystals growing out of it, like glowing crystals, and it shoots lasers out of its mouth or something like that. And then our players get to have the chance to try to fight this thing and see that, whoa, this ain't no ordinary deer. And then since we've done a little bit of combat, I think that also it'd be fun to do some exploration in my adapt step, right? So maybe maybe the kids are being held in like a cave, and they're not fighting anymore in there. Maybe all the wizards have already been killed by the kids. Ooh, I like that. And then, and so they're sort of exploring and they're trying to figure out what happened. And they'd seen this crazy deer thing that they had to kill that was like more powerful than they expected. And now they're seeing signs of like other things that happened in here that are scary. And they're like, maybe there's research notes and things that are all sort of, once again, foreshadowing the eventual twist, which is that the kids they're looking for are actually going to try to kill them. And that they have to kill them first. So, let's go ahead and do that, right? Adapt. The animal has been mutated, so they have to fight it. Alright, and then we can also, I don't think I can adjust it from here, but that's okay. So now we're starting to get our outline, right? Then the last part, once again, of the Dan Harmon story wheel is to figure out our return and our change. This is not as much something that you, as the DM, will be writing out what happens. This is more, you have to give the opportunity to the players to sort of live in that moment for their own characters. Because return is returning to the normal world, the place that you started. And change is that your characters have changed now. There's something different about them because of the things that they've just done. And in my case, what my characters will have done is probably killed children. Killed the children that they were looking for, the children that they initially wanted to find and rescue, which is an emotionally traumatic thing to do. For no question. So I think I'm gonna have my return because we started with my characters sitting around a campfire introducing themselves. I think that we should end on them sitting around a campfire after having killed these kids. And sort of just reflecting on what they've just had to do, as well as how, they're probably going to have to go back and explain this to the parents now, right? That's a kind of a cool sort of powerful beat to end on, I feel like. And once again, as the DM, this is your time, once again, to sort of step back, to let the characters just write in space for the characters to, or if you have to, maybe insert some prompts or something, like maybe another NPC that wants to get to know them better, or asks them specifically poignant questions or something. But you want to let the characters sort of reflect on themselves, the players sort of reflect on their characters, and let them sort of sit in that for a minute. And that's something that you can't really force, that's something you have to let the players do. Okay. So we've got our whole little, we've got our outline, right? We have just a sort of idea of what the sort of string of the story is going to be, but we don't have, it all sort of, we don't have the nitty-gritty, mapped out yet. And of course, like I said, one-shots are allowed to be a little bit more railroady, but it feels like I've got a really, sort of narrow, outline that doesn't have a whole lot of opportunity for player choice, right? It's totally possible that the players are going to be able to insert themselves into this and take it way off, which is why it's important to understand why you designed each of these steps the way you did. So if you have to improvise something else, you can still fill in those same story beats, with a different thing, right? So step 3 is details. It's time to map out what the details are. If you're designing new monsters, this is the time to write the stat blocks. This is the time to draw maps to figure out what your characters are going to be exploring, right? Making props, right? Inserting clues to your mystery, right? So I think that, for example, for me, I'm gonna make a stat block for this sort of mutated deer that they're gonna fight. I'm going to map out I think that the kids are being held in a cave, right? So I'm going to map out the cave so that I can describe it to my players more accurately. I'm going to insert clues into the cave, so I think there's going to be probably some dead bodies of the of the mad wizards that have been killed. I'm going to have some research notes. I'm going to figure out, I think that I'm going to have the machinery they were using to operate magically on these kids with, right? I'm going to have all that exist in the world for the players to find so that they can put the pieces together themselves of, oh, these wizards were experimenting on the kids, and now the kids are going to be messed up like the deer we saw earlier. Also, don't be afraid. If you're trying to set up a mystery, don't be afraid to put more clues and not less, right? This is probably something you've heard before, but a lot of the times, if your players can't figure out what's going on, it's mostly just frustrating to them. And if you're chucking clues at them and they figure it out way before you expected them to, it can feel a little bit disheartening as a DM. You wanted it to happen in some cool twist, but your players are going to feel so awesome for figuring it out when they did. It's total, like, your goal as the DM is to help them be excited and have fun, right? And if they figure it out before you wanted them to, that is for sure going to accomplish that. So you just have to feel successful when you do that, right? That's all you got to do. Anyway, you accomplished your goal. All right. So step 3 is details. Step 3A, game mechanics, right? Stat blocks. The thing about this also, it's really easy as a DM to sort of invent magic into your world and say, well, this works magically the way it does because I said so. And I'm doing that a little bit right now with the crystals growing out of my deer, right? And eventually out of my kids. It's a funny sounding phrase. Listen, the way that things work, you should try to ground as much of your story into the actual pre-written mechanics of the game as you can. Specifically because, the way that characters interact with the world is through the mechanics of the game. And if your story exists outside of the mechanics of the game, it's going to be very difficult for your players to engage with it. So, for example, like, what's going to happen if you have a nebulous magical item that isn't attached to anything, right? And you have a player, like you know sort of vaguely what the magic does, but you have a player come and cast Identify on it, and now you have to give them exact rules of what it does. You want to make sure that you've got that planned out ahead of time. If you ever have, here's an example. And also I have a DM that does this quite a bit right now. And I want to say that I thoroughly enjoy. Like, it can still be good if you do it like this, but I think a lot of times stories benefit from grounding themselves in the mechanics of the game. So, like, yeah, for example, when Brenly Mulligan in Exandria Unlimited was playing a god, a deity, right? And a character tried to cast a spell at the deity. He didn't say, oh, it doesn't work on him because he's a god. He says, great, and your character, and the god counterspells it with a 9th level spell slot, right? He's using the mechanics of the game as storytelling mechanics. He's not working against the mechanics of the game, right? He's intentionally setting his world in the game mechanics so that the players can engage with it. That's my whole little spiel about that. This is also, this is when I've decided to talk about the rule of threes. So you might have noticed earlier, my go step is that there's a deer running by with a toy in its mouth and some crystals growing out of it, right? But there's a lot of different ways that the characters can engage with that. And as a DM, the worst thing I can do is pick one way and make it so that that's the only way that works, right? A lot of dungeon puzzles suffer from this problem of there's only one solution, and the players can't figure out the one solution the DM has in mind, so they are stuck there forever. And it's very frustrating for both the players and for the DM when this sort of thing happens. And then sometimes maybe an NPC will just tell the players what to do or something, or the DM will just give up and tell the players what to do. And once again, that's not satisfying for either party. It feels like it pulls players out of the game, right? And so a rule that a lot of people have, and I've been doing this since before I even heard about it, is called the rule of threes, which is where whenever you have a problem, you have in mind at least 3 different solutions to that problem. And it doesn't... Usually, your players will still come up with a 4th solution, and that's totally fine. But the important thing is that you're not locking yourself into just one solution. So, for example, right, my party sees a deer with a kid's toy in its mouth. They can either chase the deer... Like, the 3 initial things I can think of are that they'll chase the deer, they'll kill the deer, or they'll talk to the deer. And I have to make sure that no matter what, there's still a way for them to be successful when they engage with it like that, right? If they chase the deer will probably lead them back to the cave that the kids are hidden in. If they kill the deer, there will be tracks left behind by the deer, right? They could follow back to the cave, probably with a low DC survival check so that we don't get stuck on it. Or with nothing, right? Or even with nothing, because if everybody just rolls crap, we're stuck. There's nothing we could do. And, right, if they talk to the deer should have, like, information about where the cave is with the kids. Maybe he was sent by the kids to try and find them before the kids went mad. And then when the deer goes mad and tries to kill them, it's even more shocking to the players because they know it on a personal level. And I've got in my notes, even, that it sounds like a kind old man. So it sounds like a kind old man, and eventually they're going to have to kill it, Or something will happen. So no matter what, all these different avenues should still be able to lead them to the cave where the children are hidden. Once again, this is a little bit of a railroady, like, right here, right? Is making sure that all of their actions lead them to the same conclusion, which is more okay to do in one-shots. But you shouldn't feel bad about putting a lot of different clues that point in the same direction, because that allows the players to act on their own agency to still go where you want them to go, right? That's good for everybody, right? The players want to have a place to go, and they want there to be obstacles in the way, so they have to work around them. And all you're doing is providing those things. Just a wide open world where you can go in any direction, but you don't have any reason to go in any direction, is not very fun. Usually players want a direction to go, right? To feel that there's a reason they want to go more one way than the other. The idea of just having a wide open world is like usually overwhelming and daunting, and players are able to have more fun and able to find a cool story when they've got a direction, right? So we've created game mechanics. We've sunk our world into the game mechanics, right? And we've also made sure that all of our challenges, all of our puzzles have ways to be solved. Oh, another way that a lot of people will handle this too, you've probably heard the advice also, but they'll just set up problems without having a solution in mind, and then they'll just present those problems as those problems would typically exist to the players, and the players have to figure out a way to solve them. Once again, this is better than having one solution in mind, because a lot of the times, your goal here is just to make sure that you're not pigeonholing your players into only doing things the way that you want them to, right? They have to be able to approach the problems you present from the direction that they want to and find a solution. Sometimes, though, this approach can feel hollow to the players if they feel like they are, like, I don't know, doing things a way that they weren't supposed to, if that makes sense. Like, if they feel like they didn't figure out the solution and they just cheesed it somehow, a lot of times players can feel weird about that, weirdly enough. And so you want to try and make it so that no matter what they do, it still fits this structure of things getting harder and them having to adapt over it. And it still feels cool to them. Alright, step 3B, flavoring. After we've done everything, right? We've set up our... We've laid out our story circle. we have flavored... No, sorry. After we've sunk our world into the mechanics, we have laid out our story circle, our outline, and we've figured out all the details of all the different challenges that they might run into. We have an idea of the flow the story is going to take. It's time just to start throwing in fun, flavoring details. A lot of times it's really easy just to make a stereotypical cave or a stereotypical dungeon that just feels like the same and it's got the same monsters and everything feels the same. So try to make as much as you can. Just sprinkle in as much as you can that's different and unique, especially leading up to, or like playing into your story or leading up to your twist, right? So for example, maybe the cave that these mad scientists are working in has like got all this like, maybe fungus that's glowing in the same way that the crystals were. And this is sort of like the magic that they're mining from or something to put it into these kids, into these animals. And then like the closer you get to where the kids are, like the more like fungus you start to see until it's just like completely like, choking each other out with how thick and full it is, and you can barely like climb through, right? And it's all glowing and bright, and you're kind of choking on it. Think about scents and tastes of the places that you're at. Think about the way that they feel. Try to make them different, and try to help them play into the story that you're trying to tell. Once again, foreshadowing, like hinting at something that's going to happen later, or making it clear up front. I like jokes, and I think about things in terms of setups and punchlines a lot, right? If you're trying to hit the punchline as hard as you can, you have to make sure that the setup is there ahead of time. And so if the punchline's going to be, you gotta kill a kid, and the kid's gonna be hard to kill and it's gonna be scary, you should have as much of a setup leading up to that as possible so that it really hits when it hits. In the form of a deer acting weird and having the same crystals and the fungus, and then like hints all over the place of these wizards that are probably trying to achieve godhood or something. You could write out the cult that they're a part of and what they're trying to do and how they're tapping into the plane of magic or the weave or whatever. There's so much cool stuff you can always do, and it's your job to do it. That's a stupid quote, but you can quote me on that. There's so much cool stuff to do, and it's your job to do it. Alright. So now that we've flavored, step 4 is to review your work. Make sure you understand all the, sort of go over the steps in your head. Anytime you feel like there's a space where you're like, well, hang on, actually, I'm not sure how the players got from this space to this space. Sort of try to throw a thread in there that's kind of tugging them along, right? You're not trying to push the players in any direction, but maybe you are trying to pull them, right? Put something interesting that you know that they'll want, that you know that they'll be attracted to into the place that you want them to go. I know that, if they're looking for the kids, and they've got this deer, no matter what, that deer is going to lead them to the cave, because I've mapped out the different routes. Once they're in the cave, right, everything's going to lead up to the room where the kid is in the same way. There's kind of going to be these invisible little threads pulling them that way. And you don't want them to feel like it's you, the DM, pushing them that way. You want to feel like that's the direction their characters want to go, because that's the place where the things are going to be, right? Or that's because that's the place where they'll be able to be successful. And then finally, run the game. But also, make sure that before you go into it, after you've broken everything down into these steps, after you've run through the nitty-gritty of everything, and after you've overworked it, make sure that it's something you're still excited about. Because if you're not excited about the session that you're going to put on for your characters, then they're not going to be excited about it either. Try to figure out, if you've lost that sort of spark that you had in the first place, figure out where you got that spark from in the first place and how to reinsert it in, These steps are just guidelines. They're just here to help guide you in figuring out how to build a structure, but they are not hard rules. And if you gotta break some of the rules to make it so it's something you're still excited about, frickin' do it! Obviously, just have fun with it. That's what this game is all about. You're supposed to have fun too. You're part of it. So figure out, make sure that it's still something you're having fun with, and then have fun with it. And then when you're running the game, don't be afraid to have fun with it. Get on the same, wavelength that your players are at. If they're in a different place than you were planning it, meet them where they're at and try to have fun in the space that they're at. And help them get excited about the story that you've got to tell, right? And if they want to take it in a different direction than you had initially planned for, once again, you know why you made those steps the way that you did. You know how to replace them with something else to fit those same story beats if you gotta. So don't be afraid to do that. Lead them in a different, let them go in a different direction. Let them find something scary or hard to do in that direction. Help them be excited about the game that they're playing. And have fun with it too, No matter how much you prepare, you're going to have to improvise something. So be ready to change stuff up on your feet. There's nothing holy about the plans you made ahead of time. The only holy ideal is having fun with your players. That's what's so fun about D&D. Alright. Get excited, and when the time comes, give it everything you got. That's what I've got written as my last line here. I think it's really funny that I wrote a script for this, and I didn't follow it at all. But I'm little Luke, and I hope I helped. Bye. Also, totally forgot to mention, tomorrow? Oh, right. Oh, I had a great summary page. Oh, that's so dumb. Alright, it's okay. Tomorrow, I am going to be streaming. I'm so dumb. Tomorrow I'm going to be streaming, playing Inscription. I just got a new computer, so I've got a fresh save file on there that I haven't played through before, and I'm going to be trying to beat it while eating sugar-free gummy bears. I'm going to try to beat it before I poop myself. So tune in for that tomorrow. I'm not going to stop streaming until either I beat Inscription or I poop myself. It's going to be a lot of fun. Tune in. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Peace out. I'm Little Luke.